And hello again from Fox News today in the Queen City, Charlotte, North Carolina, site of the Democratic National Convention. Our Fox News skybox is high up in the Time Warner Cable Arena, home of the pro basketball Charlotte Bobcats, and starting Tuesday, the first 2 days of this convention. And happy Labor Day weekend, everyone. While this holiday used to signal the start of the fall campaign, both sides have been hitting each other hard for months. As Democrats prepare to nominate Barack Obama for a second term, we are joined from the trail by his top strategist, David Axelrod. And David, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be with you.
Anyone who was at that Democratic convention in Denver 4 years ago remembers the magic there, the sense of hope and endless possibilities. How do you recapture that magic this week?
Well, I'm glad you have such warm memories of that convention, Chris, first of all. I share them. I think we're going to have a very good week in Charlotte. Our party, we don't have the problems that the other party has. We're not divided. We don't have to worry about, what people are saying on the side or about their affection for the president, or we don't have those problems, and we don't have the reinvention convention. We're a unified party. We believe strongly that we have to move this country forward around policies that'll lift the middle class, that's how you grow the economy, and we're going to point the way to the future this week, and everybody's very excited about it.
But at the Republican convention, Mitt Romney said the president's real problem is his record, and let's take a look at that.
Every president since the Great Depression who came before the American people asking for a second term could look back at the last 4 years and say with satisfaction, you're better off than you were 4 years ago, except Jimmy Carter, and except this president.
David, can you honestly say that the average American is better off today than they were 4 years ago?
Here's what I can say, Chris. I can say that we're in a better position than we were 4 years ago in our economy, in the sense that when this president took office, we were losing 800,000 jobs a month. The quarter before he took office was the worst quarter that this country has had economically since the Great Depression. And we are in a different place. 29 straight months of job growth, 4.5 million private sector jobs. Are we where we need to be? No. But the problem with what Governor Romney said is for 3 days, they never offered anybody a plausible alternative. He spoke for 45 minutes and never really offered any real ideas for how to move the economy forward, for how to lift the middle class. And in that sense, I think his convention was a terrible failure. He never talked about the principal planks of his own plan. He never talked about his $5 trillion tax cut skewed to the wealthy, never talked about turning Medicare into a voucher program. There were so many things that he didn't talk about, and people walked away, those voters who were trying to decide, and they said, well, what alternative exactly is he offering?
But you keep talking about Romney. I'd like to talk about the Obama record, and I want to put some statistics up on the screen. Unemployment was 7.8% when the president took office. It's now 8.3%. Median household income was almost $55,000. It's now less than $51,000. Gas was $1.85 a gallon when he took office. Now it's $3.78, almost double. The national debt was $10.6 trillion, and it may go past $16 trillion this week. So just looking at the president's record and those statistics, David, is the average American better off than 4 years ago?
Chris, as I said to you before, I think the average American recognizes that it took years to create the crisis that erupted in 2008 and peaked in January of 2009, and it's going to take some time to work through it. So, you say I keep talking about Mitt Romney. I keep talking about Mitt Romney because all Mitt Romney does is talk about Barack Obama. And this election is a choice. What you're going to hear this week in Charlotte is a president who's going to present a clear agenda for the future that talks about how we build a sound economy and lift the middle class in this country. You didn't hear those kinds of things from the Republican Party. Their platform was locked up in the same vault as Mitt Romney's tax returns. They simply don't want to talk about their ideas because their ideas are not ideas about the future. They're derivative of what we did in the last decade that brought our economy to its knees.
But David, again, you know, going back to the president's record, because he's the one seeking re-election, he famously said, if I don't turn this thing around and I'll be a one-term president. The economy has 300,000 fewer jobs, net, 300,000 fewer jobs now than in February of 2009.
Every single month for the last 29 months, I've heard Republicans give that talking point, and every month that number gets smaller and smaller, Chris, because we've gained 4.5 million jobs in the last 29 months. But let's talk specifically about, you say, are people better off? I think those auto workers whose industry would have collapsed if the president hadn't intervened are certainly better off. I think that the millions and millions of Americans, young Americans, and who have health care today, who wouldn't have had it if the president hadn't acted, are better off. I think the millions of people have been able to negotiate their mortgages so that they're paying lower interest rates, are better off. So there are plenty of people in our economy who have been impacted in a positive way by the decisions the president's made, but we have a lot of work to do. And remember, this is not just about reclaiming the jobs we've lost. It's about reclaiming the economic security the middle class has lost over a long period of time. And we're not going to do that with another multi-trillion-dollar tax cut for the wealthy. We're not going to do that by turning Medicare into a voucher program. So that's the choice the American people are going to face on November 6th, and it's one I think that will resolve in the president's favor.
Well, as everybody always says, it's a cliche. Elections are all about the future, so let's talk about the future and what the president is offering, his economic plan to jumpstart the economy and to get more jobs created. Let's put it up on the screen. Cut payroll taxes in half, $140 billion for new construction and to hire teachers and first responders, and $62 billion to extend unemployment benefits and to train workers. Question, how many jobs will that create?
Well, the estimate that the independent analysts have given is that it would immediately give us a million more jobs. But the point is that we need to take those steps in the short run to accelerate the recovery. But we also need to take steps to grow the economy in the long run. And the question is, do we do that by cutting taxes for the wealthy, or do we pay down our deficit and invest in things like education and training, research and development and innovation, clean energy technology, infrastructure, the things we know we need to grow the economy? The president has a balanced plan for the long term as well as a plan for the short term. Governor Romney has neither. Moody's said if we enacted the Romney plan that it would actually ratchet down the recovery in the short term and would balloon our deficits in the long term. And his plan, according to the Brookings Institute, would actually raise the tax burden on the middle class by $2,000. This is not a prescription for building a stronger economy.
But David, again, I want to focus, if we can, on the president's plan. According to Mark Zandi, the chief economist at Moody's, it would create 1.9 million jobs. According to a survey of, I think, 24 economists by Bloomberg, it would create a quarter of that, about 250,000 jobs, actually an eighth of that. You know, that's about 100,000 jobs a month or less, which is nowhere near even keeping up with the population growth. The point is that they're making is that this doesn't really solve the unemployment problem at all. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody that would say increasing taxes on the wealthy, I mean, it may be a good answer for the deficit, but it isn't going to jumpstart the economy.
Well, first of all, that's 100,000 on top of the growth we already have. We're already creating, on the average, 100,000 jobs a month. So we're talking about on top of that. But and most of those folks, all the analysts suggest that it's something that we need to do. We need a short-term plan, but we also need a long-term plan. The president has a plan that would reduce the deficits by $4 trillion over the next decade, according to the Congressional Budget Office, and still allow for investments in those things that we need to grow the economy. Governor Romney has no such plan.
David,
so
let me
if
pick
you're
up,
interested
let me
in
pick
growing
up on
the
that and ask you.
then it's clearly you should go with a person who has a plausible plan.
David, let's talk about that plan. When does the president balance the budget?
Yeah, I know. This is the question that Paul Ryan couldn't answer about the Republican budget. The president's plan would do what the Simpson-Bowles plan would do, which is cut the deficit by $4 trillion, reduce it to under our deficits to under 3% of the gross domestic product, which is what everybody agrees we need to stabilize the debt. And then with growth, we'll be in a position to begin reducing it further. So, you know, we have
David,
a plausible plan here.
My point is
let me just say one thing. Let me just say one thing about this, Chris. Go ahead. You make your point, and then I'll make mine.
All right. Well, it's not a point. It's a question. The Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan, says that the president's 2013 budget plan never balances the budget. And they also say that he does nothing to deal with the long-term structural problems of entitlements. So if you talk about long-term dealing with our economy and our debt, the president never balances the budget.
Chris, as I said to you, we agree with Simpson and Bowles and others who've looked at this. What's necessary is to stabilize the debt and then work from there. You can't balance the budget in the short term, because to do that would be to ratchet down the economy. We just had a discussion about what's needed to
never is not the short term.
In the short term,
but over time, what you have to do is stabilize the debt. David, Simpson-Bowles, that was your presidential commission, and you ignored it.
Yeah, well, I noticed that Congressman Ryan made that point in his speech without mentioning that he was on the commission and voted against it. And why did he vote against it? Because it called for tax cuts, tax increases on upper-income Americans, and the Republican Party.
David, that isn't why he voted against it. He voted against it because it didn't. Listen, it's a fair point that he didn't mention it, but that isn't why. But the point is, it was the president's commission, and he let it die on the vine.
His party took another position. But he didn't let it die on the vine, Chris. It helped shape his proposals. He's got a plausible, credible $4 trillion plan. The Congressional Budget Office has said it's a plausible, credible plan. Everyone agrees if it were enacted, it would have a very positive impact. We would stabilize the debt. And the reason it won't pass is because the Republican Party in the Congress, with Mitt Romney's support, says they won't raise taxes on anyone in this country, including the super wealthy, even by $1. They are not credible on the deficit. Paul Ryan stood on that platform, and he looked up at that deficit, at that debt clock, and he made no mention of the fact that he voted for every single one of the policies in the last decade that are at the root of the explosion of the debt. 2 unpaid wars, 2 unpaid tax cuts, an unpaid Medicare prescription drug program. They have no standing to talk about deficits, and their plans today would explode them in the future. $5 trillion of tax cuts Mitt Romney wants, $2 trillion more in defense spending, and no credible plan to offset those cuts. So they can talk about being bold, they can talk about facing up to these problems, they just don't do it.
Listen, I could go back at you, and I'd love to do it. We're running out of time. I want to talk just a little politics now, not issues. The tracking polls so far, they aren't. Many of them seem to show that Romney got about a 3 to 5 point bounce out of his convention. According to one poll, he's now leading by 3 points. He was trailing by 2. What does your polling show in terms of the bounce the Republicans got?
I don't really see any bounce, Chris. I actually, now I haven't seen numbers this morning, but throughout the week I saw absolutely no movement, and I don't think there would have been, because people were looking for answers, they were looking for solutions, and what they got were snarky attacks and bromides for the base. And so I think people walked away unsatisfied from that convention. I think the race is exactly where it was before they walked in, and now it's our turn.
And in less than a minute, where is this race now?
I think that we have a lead in this race. It's a slight lead. It's going to be a close race. I think we're ahead in all these battleground states. There are slight leads in those battleground states, but I'd much sooner be us than them. That said, we expected a close race. We're going to have a close race, and we're doing everything that we can to make our case to the American people, and Charlotte's going to be a big part of that.
David, thank you so much. Thanks for talking with us, and Chris, we'll see you down the campaign trail.
Look forward to it. Look forward to it.